Hey, here we go. Let's see.
Under Iraq on September 10th, 2020. Hard about what I wanted to say about this, and honestly, regardless of what I say, I'm still probably going to piss some people off. I don't really care. So let's just cut to the chase. In case you've been living under a rock, on September 10th, 2025, conservative commentator, podcaster, influencer, whatever you want to call him, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while hosting a debate event at Utah Valley University. After a multi-day manhunt which involved the FBI arresting two wrong suspects, authorities eventually arrested 22-year-old Tyler Robinson as the shooter. From there, discussion only grew about motive, the politics of the shooter, and everything else you might expect. But I'll get to that more in a minute or two. First, I just need to say, the murder of Charlie Kirk was objectively a horrible thing. We are far worse off as a country than we were before this happened, and even if you for some reason gained some sort of short-term gratification from seeing Kirk get killed, it is impossible to deny that something seems to have changed for the worse in the United States. The bigger picture is extremely
I believe that is absolutely objectively correct. That's the objectively correct part. I know we're basically late on this and we're 2 weeks after the entire backlash, but at the state that the United States is now, this is actually more relevant than ever. And I'm not lie, I never want to live in a society that glorifies violence. I'll explain why one of these days, very soon.
bleak. You can't ignore that. And that's coming from someone who, as you probably could have guessed by now if you've been watching this channel for a while, didn't exactly see eye to eye with Charlie Kirk on everything. But that doesn't even matter. If you cannot view this objectively from a bigger picture and see just how horrible of a situation we now find ourselves in as a country because of this, you need to reframe your thinking. I'm already getting incredibly opinionated here, but I don't care. This video is probably just going to be one long rant. I just want to get my thoughts out there. I'm concerned for this country, and you should be too. Let's dive in a bit deeper. The immediate aftermath of Kirk's killing. After news quickly spread all over social media of Kirk being shot, I observed three main camps of reactions, so to speak, from those I knew personally and people online. And I'm sure many of you can probably say the same thing. Those camps were 1, people outwardly celebrating what happened, 2, people expressing anger, fear, and grief, and 3, those treading a bit more cautiously, claiming that we should be empathetic and respectful to the dead, but not really outwardly expressing their own opinion on the matter. I'm mainly here to focus on that first camp. More specifically, I'm here to say that if you were out there making public TikToks or Instagram posts and laughing at Kirk getting shot, where is your head at? Genuinely. Like, what are you thinking? I can understand being against Kirk's beliefs, what he stood for, the things he said, anything like that. I can understand believing that Kirk was a bad person because he believed those things. You have a right to do that. You have a right to that opinion. I'm not even going to tell you you have to express sympathy toward him or his family. You don't even have to really care about this whole situation if you don't want to. I assume if you're watching this video you do, but maybe not, I don't know. But for the people who were making TikToks, Instagram posts outwardly celebrating murder, you do realize what this means for the bigger picture, right? Or do you just not care? Charlie Kirk was not some high-ranking politician or some healthcare CEO. He was a podcaster and a social commentator. An influential one, absolutely, no doubt about that. He was instrumental in getting Trump elected for a second term. But this guy held the exact same or similar beliefs as the supposed crazy Trump supporter family members that you also have. Maybe you also have friends with similar beliefs. I don't know. I have no idea what your situation is. But my point is, if he was a target, anyone with influence in the political world can be a target. And I'd be willing to bet we will see that pendulum swing back and forth in the coming months. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes though. For now, I need to pivot a bit and make another point, which is that
Interesting fact, I had an ice office was shot a while back, and by a while I mean yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday or so, and then just a few hours ago, a church was burnt. God help us, and this all after the people are actually noticing the Christians getting massacred in my world is a really dark place. Always.
reality doesn't seem to matter anymore. After the shooter was arrested, we saw a whole lot of people jump to conclusions about his politics and the motive behind the killing. And guess what? A lot of people were totally wrong. Surprise, surprise. Immediately after the first photos of the shooter were released, we saw numerous viral posts claiming that this guy was a groyper, aka someone who's a big fan of alt-right poster boy Nick Fuentes. The theory spreading through many left-leaning circles was that the shooter believed Charlie Kirk wasn't actually right-leaning enough. Obviously, this ended up not being true. We now
I believe Redditors can make up any lie that they see fit in order to justify their beliefs. They will literally do anything but take accountability. At least those people on the the mainstream side of Reddit. I know there are some there's like a minority of them that are actually chill. I don't I for my sake of my mental health, I don't spend too much time on that app or almost any social media platform. I try to be a bit productive from time to time.
know from messages sent from Robinson to his roommate that Robinson said, quote, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out." He also left several messages written on bullet casings left at the scene. Among a few of them were random memes and jokes, but one of them also said, "Hey fascist, catch," with an input sequence from the video game Helldivers 2 written on it. All in all, it's pretty clear that Robinson wasn't some super alt-right white nationalist Nick Fuentes fan. He wouldn't have been calling Charlie Kirk a fascist if he was, but to many, apparently evidence like that doesn't matter. According to a poll from YouGov from shortly after the shooting, nearly a quarter of the 2,355 adults surveyed believe Kirk shooter to be a Republican. Meanwhile, 21% assumed him to be a Democrat, 15% said neither, and 40% were just unsure of what his politics may have been, which is honestly a bit reassuring. Regardless though, the whole point here is that, despite there being no real evidence pointing to it, nearly a quarter of adults surveyed believe the shooter to be a Republican. As to why they thought that, I have no idea, but I think it's fair to assume that at least some of that group believed Robinson to be a Republican simply because they wanted him to be, or thought that it fit their narrative more. A similar thing can be said for those who believed him to be a Democrat too, but not to the same extent. As I've already mentioned, we know Robinson's motive, and we also know he was beginning to become more involved in politics and was more left-leaning. But he also didn't seem to be someone who held all extremely left political beliefs either, and that goes against what we've heard from the US government, which I'll talk about more in a second. You might be thinking, how can I make that claim? How do we know he's not a leftist? Well, an article from independent journalist Ken Klippenstein, where he interviewed Robinson's closest friends, demonstrates that. In one portion of the article, Klippenstein writes, quote, "Yesterday, FBI Director Kash Patel said in an interview that Robinson subscribed to left-wing ideology, citing his family's remarks to investigators. But those close to Robinson say there was a lot his family didn't know about him. Quote, their ideas are based on someone they didn't fully understand." That same friend continues on, saying, quote, "Obviously he's okay with gay and trans people having a right to exist, but he also believes in the Second Amendment." The friend saying he was okay with gay and trans people was key, because Robinson apparently had a partner who was transgender, and it's this evidence that the Trump administration is in part using to label this as trans-affiliated violence, calling Robinson a radical leftist. You want to know what Robinson's politics probably were? Look at this image. This probably accurately describes it. Yes, Robinson definitely held left-leaning beliefs, but was he a typical cookie-cutter leftist? Probably not. The whole Klippenstein article shines more light on this, so it's linked down below in my sources, but it's almost like people who are driven to murder typically have incoherent opinions that are pretty detached from reality as a whole.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I think I get it now. He was just a guy that was just filled with hate. He wasn't like, say, the subscribing to. He had leftist ideology, but also believed in some second amendment rights, which basically the reason why he was using that gun. But regardless, he was so filled with hate and thinking Charlie Kirk spread that much hate that basically said that now this guy gotta go. So he basically got on top of that roof and started shooting.
If you can't figure it out by now, the whole point I'm trying to make is that he probably held views across the political spectrum, and he more so believed in chaos than anything else. But like I said, the Trump administration doesn't care about that. And this is another big reason why I said if you were outwardly celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, you need to reframe your thinking. Kirk being killed was horrific. What it has resulted in, what it may result in for this country, will likely be worse. The loss of Kirk and what he stood for have left a sizable hole in the modern conservative movement, at least for now. People on the right are extremely angry. Many viewed him as the future of the Republican Party, and the rhetoric seen from prominent right-wing figures on social media is terrifying. They want violence, they want retribution, and they might just get it. We even saw Trump say this at Kirk's memorial service this past week.
He did not hate his opponents, he wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. And I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
In a time when peace and urge for calm is needed more than ever, we've got the President of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, sowing more division. And those comments in Trump's speech came directly after Kirk's wife got up on that stage and said she forgave the shooter. Like, that's just insane for him to do that. We've also got one of the world's richest men writing to his over 200 million followers on X, quote, "Either we fight back or they will kill us." We've got others calling for Democrats in general to be designated a domestic terror organization. Trump has come out publicly to say he's going to designate Antifa a terrorist organization. Another independent report from the aforementioned Klippenstein claims that the FBI is now looking into designating trans people in general as quote-unquote violent extremists in the wake of Kirk's death. Where that rabbit hole leads, who the hell knows, but it can't mean anything good for anybody on either side. And yet we still had people out there publicly celebrating Kirk's murder and others calling for civil war because of it, as if the massive shockwave that would send through the political world would benefit them in any way, shape, or form. It was a horrific event and it benefits absolutely nobody, except for those who seek to divide us even more. With that, I'm now going to pivot a bit to discuss one final development that has come from Kirk's murder. Let's get into it. The right's take on cancel culture. To be honest, I wasn't even going to originally include this in the video until that whole situation with Jimmy Kimmel happened and continues to happen, so I feel like it's worth discussing now, as it's directly tied to this event as a whole. After Kirk was killed and we saw a large amount of people celebrating his death, which as I've already established I believe is wrong, we also saw some huge right-wing accounts on X start getting people fired for their posts online, which is some pretty insane irony in my opinion. To me, conservatives have always been anti-cancel culture, but this is the exact definition of canceling people. It's also entirely anti-free speech, which is something I'll touch on more in a second. A common defense I've seen for this is that it's not okay to make fun of people dying, which I do agree with, but do we not remember how many jokes got thrown around by conservatives about people like George Floyd? Remember the whole knee on the neck challenge people were doing? And if you're mad about me comparing Charlie Kirk's death to Floyd's, how about the assassination of Democratic lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband this past June? We literally had a sitting Republican senator from Utah, Mike Lee, post this the day after the assassination happened, and he faced absolutely no consequences for this post, aside from
I definitely think he should lose his position immediately. Like, I'm not even joking. That guy should definitely lose his position 100%. This type of thing is not acceptable in any society. That's right. When it comes to policies like this, my views are very, very strong. No one is above this. People who post things like this, like that, right or left, are very scummy people, and they shouldn't be allowed to even say stuff like this without consequence.
some backlash online. I don't know, to me it's all a slippery slope. I hope what I'm about to say sounds like a common sense stance, but I think making public posts that mock the death of somebody and make light of the situation as a whole is not the smartest thing to do. But people also have a right to do it if they want to, and that leads me to the whole Jimmy Kimmel situation as well. In case you missed it, Kimmel made a couple comments about the Kirk shooting on his first show after the news, and he didn't really mock Kirk's death in any way. Instead, he said that the Trump administration was, quote, desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and trying to, quote, score political points from it. Anyways, some people weren't too happy with these comments, and Disney ultimately decided to take Kimmel off the air for what he said. This ultimately ignited a huge debate around free speech in the First Amendment after reports began surfacing that ABC executives made the decision to pull Kimmel off the air despite thinking he didn't necessarily cross the line, because they feared retaliation from the Trump administration. Ultimately, Kimmel was reinstated about a week later, with some networks choosing not to air the show. Trump wasn't too happy about this, surprise surprise, so we'll have to see if anything else comes of it. I don't know if anything will, but it will